Welcome to the Orion Sportscast podcast, the most refreshing analysis, insight, and opinions in the world of sports. Here are your hosts, Josh Egan and Brandon Waterhouse.
All right, welcome back. Episode 3. Let's get right into it. Brandon, how are we feeling today?
Oh, man. Depends what you're asking me. If we're feeling sports or if we're feeling physically, because we've been on the microphone for a couple of hours now. What are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. We're getting a lot of good feedback, and I'm ready to just keep on rolling. We have an interview later in today's episode, so the initial sports talk is going to be a little shorter than the last two, but Mason Black from NHL Rank King will be joining us at the end of the episode today.
Covers a lot of NHL.
A lot. So we're probably just going to skip the NHL talk and then get back to it at the end, so don't worry about that. NFL Sunday. Let's get to it. So I think the biggest story coming out of this weekend in the NFL, Odell Beckham Jr. torn ACL. I guess there wasn't a mutual understanding between him and his ACL because he tore it. What do you think of this?
Yeah, 1 second. I can't find the document right now. I got to go to the different Google account.
All good.
But yeah, official news today. You saw if you were watching yesterday, Odell went down, but it's official that he tore his ACL, and now I found the doc, so we're good. But yeah, I mean, I know what I'm talking about because it's hard to inspiration. I mean, I don't like the Browns, but I don't even really like Beckham, but I'm feeling for both of them today. So we got a retrofitted here, Browns jersey, but he's such a superstar athlete, and you see this happen with like Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, just athletes in general, the ACL injury. I don't even know what, but just that is such a common tragic injury, man. And when it happens like so early in someone's career, before they've even really done anything, it's
it's a shame.
I feel for him. I feel for him personally, and the Browns.
They're in trouble now. They're in trouble.
What do you think?
I'm trying to find the tweet you sent me because I got a good laugh out of it. And I think it describes the injury pretty well.
Yeah, it was Saquon and Odell were side by side in a tweet, and some guy said, why are ACLs even a thing? They just there to be torn.
Yeah.
Stupid ass ligament.
Yeah, he's a big part of that Browns team. As much as we laugh at the Browns and make fun of them, and they were the laughing stock of the NFL for multiple years, but now you hate to see athletes in their primes get injured when they're doing well. And now they've lost probably their best player. You could argue that it's Baker Mayfield, but man, losing OBJ is it's a big hit to the Browns. They managed to win the game still. But again, they were playing the Bengals. So, what if you lose, you lose them and you're playing a team that's a little more talented than the Bengals, who looked good. The Bengals did look good, and they almost won it at the end with a Hail Mary after time had expired, but the receiver couldn't just get his hands on it.
Yeah, man, that's there's two or 3 weeks ago, there was that one Sunday in the NFL where Saquon got hurt, where like everyone got hurt.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, rest in peace, Leafs flag.
I'm leaving it.
What's the word?
Yeah, Saquon got hurt and everybody got hurt that weekend.
The Leafs are falling down, man.
It's all good. 3 off, eh?
But Saquon and the ACL and Odell. Yeah, I mean, they won. Do you think Landry's enough on the receiving end?
No.
No,
they need Beckham Jr. there. They're probably still going to make the playoffs. I think they got a little bit of a light schedule. But, Baker lost his best player, his best receiver. So we'll see how they do with that. In other injury news, Cowboys lost Andy Dalton to a cheap shot to the head. It was a dirty hit. He was out instantly. The player who hit him got ejected from the game. And now the Cowboys are in real trouble. They lost. They're pretty much playing a lost season now. Coaching staff. They've lost the coaching staff. The coaching staff has lost the players. They're down to their third string quarterback. Like, what are we looking at here out in Dallas?
Yeah, is the third string a name? Does he have a name, or is he like a nobody?
I didn't recognize it. I'll pull it up.
So I don't know if you saw the full hit. Did you see that hit on Andy Dalton? He almost got decapitated.
Yeah.
It
It was dirty.
That player got kicked out right away.
He did. He got ejected from the game. I think it's Ben DiNucci.
Are the Bengals even doing anything anyway?
Cowboys?
Oh, wait a minute. The Cowboys. Why did I say that? He's playing on the Bengals. Dalton, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, my bad. The Cowboys. Oh, that Cowboys doing anything. The Cowboys third string. Yeah, I didn't. You didn't have much of a name for me. You're right. I don't recognize him.
No, but yeah, they're in trouble there. I think they're playing a lost season. They're going to need a miracle. I heard some talk that Colin Kaepernick might end up with a job there. The amount of times we've heard this now, though, Kaepernick's going to go here, Kaepernick's going to go there. I don't think it's going to happen. I just think the Cowboys are going to have to finish the season with what they have and then regroup in the offseason and hopefully come back stronger. I mean, they were supposed to do some damage this year, but damage is being done to them. So, I mean, I don't know.
This is factual. I saw someone saying something about how Jerry Jones deserves this, like just in terms of how he treated Dak and the money.
Yeah, I mean, the team deserves it. The players it's happening to, though, it's a shame. You hate seeing athletes get hurt, right?
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah. Moving on, there was a play in the NFL this weekend, and it blew my mind. We had, who was it? We had Buda Baker was free and clear after a pick six, and he was going to make it, and he got chased down. Did you see this play?
Yes, I did.
And he was chased down by DK Metcalf. I think I'm saying his name right.
Yeah.
And this play, I have never seen a man run that fast in my life. Like, he was eyes on him, gun speed. I believe he hit 38 kilometers an hour at one point. Flew down the field, made the tackle, and they did not convert on the play. So he did actually stop a scoring drive, which is unreal to think about. Go and watch this play. It is a unreal show of athleticism and just shows you that NFL players are just all around great athletes. It was unreal. Like, the way he ran him down, he was not letting him into that end zone.
Yeah, well, it sucks when your wide receiver has to make the defensive highlight in the game, but
it's not ideal.
What's done is done.
But that just that stood out for me. Over to the Patriots, Cam Newton was benched.
Dude, rest in peace, Cam Newton and the Patriots, man.
It didn't really pick up on my radar till the end. So why was he benched? Do you know?
I wasn't necessarily watching it, but I saw the final score, and the Patriots got blown out. Did they not?
Yeah.
They got blown out by who? Someone who I didn't even expect to get them blown out.
They got blown out by, I'm going to screw this up unless I check.
The Broncos?
49ers, 33-6.
Yeah, just absolutely torched. And then I heard some, rumblings about if Belichick thought Newton's spot was in question, or, that's what I woke up to today. And I was just like, well, holy, like, what did I miss? So yeah. I'm about to go and check his, I'm trying to go check his box score from yesterday, if I'm being honest with you. So give me 2 seconds.
I mean, it seemed to come out of nowhere for me. I was just kind of chilling, watching the football game, and then I just kind of see on my Twitter feed that, Cam Newton's on his way out. Cam Newton's been benched. And I'm going, what? And just a funny side note for that, Jimmy Garoppolo was the QB for the 49ers. He was Tom Brady's backup for 3 years, so he got to beat his old team.
So listen, for Cam Newton, his stat line was 15 attempts with 9 completions with 3 interceptions for 98 yards.
Well, that's not what you want.
So that's why he was yanked. And then the backups guy, his name is Jay. Don't know the first. Give me Jay Stidham. What's his first name? Jay Stidham. Jarrett Stidham. He threw for 64 yards on 60% passing on 10 attempts with 1 interception. So the Patriots are missing Tom Brady.
Yeah, and Tom Brady is not missing the Patriots because the Buccaneers pulled off another win this weekend. They looked dominant. They beat the Raiders 45-20. Brady's looking good, man. He's getting better.
Brady is
better.
getting better. Antonio Brown alert.
Yeah, I guess we can go right into that. Antonio Brown signs with the Buccaneers 1 year, so the rest of the year, I guess. Do you think he'll fit in well there?
So this is interesting because Tom Brady's now chased Antonio Brown twice as he's been a free agent. So once literally in New England, and then obviously now here in Tampa Bay. And I saw this thing and like he has so many weapons, and people are just. I literally saw an article by someone on Twitter mentioning how it's an insurance policy that they signed Antonio Brown. When I'm not necessarily sure that having someone with his ability, skill set, and experience is an insurance liability when he could easily be your first or second option.
Right. I don't think he's going to play prime minutes right away. I think he's going to be.
He's going to catch the ball though.
He will, and I think they just got to be careful of his usage early on because he is obviously going to be there for the playoff push. So they're just going to want to warm him up and bring him in because he hasn't played in a while. And yeah, I thought it was we kind of all saw it coming when it was leaked that he was been in talks with them. And Brady had scouted him before. He played one game and obviously had to step away because of legal reasons. He was under investigation for some things we won't get into. But yeah, it's good signing for them. Hopefully he fits in. You know, people have been saying be a team player or get out. So hopefully he's a team player and falls in line with coaching staff.
That's what the coach said, right?
Yeah. So, you know, they're not going to have much patience with him. And I mean, best of luck to the guy. I hope it works out. The Buffalo Bills.
Your Bills
did not look very good. They won. They beat the Jets. But so the Jets fall to 0-7. But they won 18-10. And watching the game, they did not look very good. I'm starting to get worried about my Bills. They're 5-2 on the season now. Josh Allen did not have his best outing against the Jets, and at points they trailed in the game by as much as 10 points. So
he threw for 300 yards.
Yeah.
On 30 completions with 43 attempts, with 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions.
Yeah, no touchdowns is the worrying thing because that Jets defense is not good. So,
well, they're still in first in their division. The Buffalo Bills.
But they got to keep an eye out because they still have to play some powerhouse teams. And if you're struggling against a Jets team, you're going to be struggling against like bigger, more powerful teams.
Speaking of powerhouses, how are the Steelers?
Steelers still undefeated. They are the only undefeated team in the NFL this year, or the last undefeated team in the NFL this year. I don't think they'll stay undefeated. I think Big Ben's going to get tired. You know, he's going to have a game where he's looking tired. But they beat the Titans 27-24, so it was a close game, entertaining game.
3 interceptions, the guy.
Right. And I think the team around him is playing well for a change, which is where they are getting most of their success from. It's not an individual showcase this year. They are playing well around him, which is good. And, you know, the Steelers, they might make a run at the Super Bowl. Can they do it? I don't know. Still lots of football left, though, but they are a undefeated team, the last one standing. So
how would you set up Monday Night Football here for us?
Monday Night Football. Bears, Rams, 2 okay teams. I mean, the Bears are 5-1. The Rams are 4-2. It's nice for Bears fan to be 5-1 now. Like they didn't look very good last year. The Rams are a pretty good team. I think it's gonna be a nice close game. I'm not sure what the spread is, but both teams they feel disrespected. Like we got 2 disrespected teams going against each other. So I think it's going to be a tight game to the finish. And hopefully we see some good football. I don't want to see a blowout on Monday Night Football. That's the worst because it's the only game on, right? So let me just check the spread quickly. But I think the Bears will be favored. Let me take a look. However, it might be a pick 'em, which means it's really close.
Take your chance.
The Rams are favored by a touchdown. at the moment. So, but that could change. Well,
Yeah. So
I'll be watching.
Oh, there you go. If you're a football fan, you might be watching.
But that was pretty much the NFL wrap-up. A couple other scores of note. We had the Chargers beat the Jags 39-29, so the Jags continue to fall. The Cardinals beat the Seahawks in overtime yesterday, 37-34. That was a good Sunday night game. The Lions beat the Falcons 23-22. Funny little play in that game. The Falcons tried to kill time on the clock by taking a knee just before the end zone, but the guy who took a knee actually fell into the end zone, scoring a touchdown, which gave the Lions the ball back with 1:04 on the clock, and they were able to come within range and get the touchdown to tie it up and then hit a field goal with no time left on the clock.
Thank you for explaining that, because I heard a lot about that. I saw this picture of this guy. I was like, why is this a thing? And he's just like kneeled over the end zone by an inch.
Yeah, I didn't see it at first, and then I looked into it. I was like, oh boy. The Packers keep rolling, beat the Texans 35-20. And then we had the Saints beating the Panthers 27-24. So it was a pretty good week in NFL football. Any final thoughts on the NFL?
Yeah. Prayers to Odell.
He'll be back.
Hopefully we can keep limiting the COVID cases and stay on the field.
Yeah, right. So that'll be good. You want to go to the NBA quickly, because it's just kind of one story.
Yeah, so there's not much really going on in the NBA this week, at least since we last talked about it. At least that was a couple of days ago. So, and it's already the off season, so don't expect too much right now. But the NBA was initially gearing up to set up in the early to mid date of January 2021 calendar, but now it seems through pushback of the players maybe, or some management and GMs, they're trying to get a Christmas Day start. Some people are saying Christmas miracle. Obviously, that would be amazing to see this, especially if it was live on instead of just generally maybe Boxing Day. If it was actually the first game of the season on Christmas Day, that would be a first. I mean, obviously it has to be a first in NBA history, but there's always Christmas games that are super anticipated for, that are like rivalries almost just on Christmas Day, which is usually in the middle of the year. But to have opening day on Christmas would be a great gift for the NBA fans, especially because of I think the ability that the NBA has to pull it off, right?
Yeah, and the reason they're doing this, and the NHL is looking at the same thing, is because they're already considering the 2021 season a lost season, because it should have started right by now for both leagues. So they want to get started as quickly as possible and get it out of the way so they can be back on track for the 2022-2023 season.
Yep.
They want to be able to get that. 2021 for all sports is going to be a lost revenue year. They want to be able to get back on track for 2022 with a full slate of games and back to their regular calendar. The NHL doesn't want to be starting in December, and the NBA doesn't want to be starting in December. They want to be able to run one season, so the 2021 season from December to say August or even July, and then get back into the swing of things by September, November for a full 82 game season next season after the upcoming one.
That's crazy you mentioned that, actually, because half of the reason that the professional leagues want to get back on track into some normalcy in terms of scheduling is because here's a prime example of the MLB has lost 3.1 million, I believe, dollars or billion. I have to go recheck that. Billion dollars. The MLB has lost $3.1 billion since the pandemic started, and due to the shortened season. Do you guys hear $3.1 billion?
I'm not surprised.
Oh my God, man.
They played 60 games, which is about 100 less than they normally play per team, times that by all the teams in the league. They're not having fans in the crowd, so they got no gate revenue. And I'm not sure how the TV rights worked, but if, say, a TV deal wasn't given their 162 games, I doubt they were paying the full price to have rights to the games. So it doesn't shock me they lost that much money. They'll make it back. No problem. It's just, everyone's at a loss right now. And the MLB might be one that hits the hardest because it's one of the bigger leagues for sports-wise.
Dude.
It's crazy that's the amount of money they lost, though. It's, The World Series is still going.
Speaking of craziness,
yeah,
what a finish to that last game, man.
Yeah, it was a good game. I mean, I would just want to touch on. So last night was Game 5. The Dodgers went up 3-2. Clayton Kershaw was on the mound. He got the win, and he also now holds the record for postseason strikeouts with 207. But if we go back to Game 4, the Rays won off of 2 errors in the last play of the game. That can't happen in the World Series, but it happens. It's baseball. It's crazy. So they were able to tie it up, and then last night the Dodgers pulled ahead. But what stood out to me about that game was a Rays player tried to steal home while Kershaw was pitching. I just thought it was an example of going for the win when you shouldn't be, when you're down, and it was an aggressive play. It didn't work out for him, but I thought it was creative, and I appreciated the effort from him, even if it didn't work out.
Got to play a little bit smarter there, I think.
Yeah. But, if you're down, you're down. So you got to be able to tie it back up. But I believe Game 6 goes tonight, and then Game 7 is on Wednesday, I believe. So let me double check that. But Kershaw will be available for Game 7 if needed. I think it'll go to Game 6 is tomorrow, and then Game 7 is Wednesday. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I think we'll go to Game 7. Be entertaining. But like I said.
So that's what's going on in the MLB, and what do you got for us next?
Just some quick soccer news, just a follow-up to one of our stories. Well, not our stories, but something we talked about with
our story.
Yeah, we reported.
You need to pay us for it.
Yeah, but the MLS will award the Supporters Shield this year after pushback from players, supporters, and fans and management. So the regular season trophy will be awarded to the top earning point getter in the MLS. So they weren't originally going to do that, but now they are. And just a side note to TFC, they had their youngest player make a debut this weekend because they were losing 5-0 to Philadelphia.
Oh man, did you see the Alphonso Davies get hurt?
Yeah, I saw that too.
That's brutal.
He's out 6 to 8 weeks.
So he's a promising Canadian superstar. If you guys didn't know, soccer player who's playing across the seas now, right?
Yeah, he's playing overseas in Europe. And
what do you got for us? I see you touched on golf here.
Yeah, it was the Zozo Championship is usually held in Japan because of COVID restrictions. They moved it over to the States this year, and usually it's a showcase for big names. But Tiger Woods finished 1 under, and Mickelson was 3 over, and those were 2 of the bigger names in it. Patrick Cantley won at 23 under, and Corey Connors tied for 8th at 18 under. So it was the only golf tournament going on this weekend. So I just thought I would highlight it. There were some good shots, actually. And on Thursday, I believe, this wasn't at the Zozo, but we saw on the Italian PGA Tour, I believe, somebody was teeing off, and they actually hit the power line going over the golf course. So he got to re-tee his ball in a free drop, which is, I haven't seen that before. So I just thought that was interesting. And then 3 other players proceeded to hit the power lines. So don't hit the power lines when you're golfing, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think Tiger Woods is done. Phil Mickelson maybe done too. I mean, he's wiping up on the seniors tour, though. I think he's a perfect 2-0 on it. But yeah, Canada showed up at the event. Corey Connors tied for 8th, which was nice to see.
Speaking of Canada showing up for things, let's before we touch on the UFC, I wanted to touch on something a little bit closer to home here.
Nice transition.
I try. So it's an unfortunate story. It's not necessarily related to sports in the rooting of it, but the Toronto Argonauts of the CFL came out with a very positive message after such an unfortunate incident here in Pickering, Ontario. If you're not aware of what happened, I'll give you a very short explanation, but there was a high school here in Pickering, Ontario. This is on the news. The police were involved. There was a yearbook, and there was a quote, and there was a racist quote, and the individual receiving the racist quote was African American, and that the backlash was I don't even know how to describe it, but it was backlash from the public to the school, and how the school didn't understand how that this got through to the yearbooks, and all the students had to give their yearbooks back, and no one can really understand how this would have happened through what I've heard, because it seems as if though uh, it's the Pickering High School released a statement just saying that this is not what they are and it's not what they stand for. So it's good that they said that. But more news is that the individual who received these remarks, the Toronto Argonauts, I don't know if he's a football player himself, but if the Toronto Argonauts saw this and they came up to his house in a parade formation almost, with a couple of the players, I'm sure, and some of the management, and they simply just read him a letter. The individual who received he received the hate in the yearbook, and he was just heartbroken before, and he's still very heartbroken. And what happened though is the Argonauts have funded this young man's 4 years in any Canadian universities as a scholarship. They're funding him for free, and it just goes to show that I think this is a perfect example of sports bringing life together.
Yeah, for sure.
And giving an everyday individual, if they're not even connected into sports or not, showing them that sports has a beautiful place in this world for giving back.
Yeah, it was a nice story to see. I mean, obviously it wasn't nice how it came about. But,
it wasn't a very good, for sure.
The Argos put their stamp on it and made it a positive story. And this young man's
and it's great for sports. Yes, it's great for sports, recognizing that something always needs to be done.
Yeah, for sure.
The right thing always needs to be done.
Yeah. So we had UFC over the weekend.
Speaking of the right thing needed to be done, a superstar has retired.
Yeah, Khabib called it. He won his fight in the second round via a triangle choke. And after the fight, he called it, says he doesn't want to fight anymore without his dad in his corner, which is understandable. He's being called as one of the greatest, if not the greatest fighter of all time, finished 29-0. And that lightweight division just got a lot more interesting now the title's vacant. He had a good career. I would have liked to see him fight a couple more times, but we got to respect his wishes. He doesn't want to fight without his dad in his corner, who unfortunately passed away in the last couple months. So all the best to him and his family. But I think the story that stands out more for me in the UFC is, and you sent me this, somebody won their fight, and I don't even know who it was, but this was so disgusting. And they had the Nelk boys with them, and they all spat in his shoe, and then he drank it.
My God.
And then he drank it.
Dude, what was that? That was insane. In the times of COVID, if you are not aware of the Nelk boys, they are just a group of they're almost like the next they were starting to become more of the next versions of, if you're aware of Jackass back in the day. They're just more or less stuntmen doing these disgusting acts or ways to get attention. But sometimes they're not acts, they're pranks as well. They're funny. They have their moments. And one of these moments was helping. I don't know how they get these places, but somehow they get behind the scenes of a UFC event to spit in someone's shoe to celebrate while he drinks beer out of it.
Yeah, I would never do that.
If you guys have not seen the video, you should be able to very accessibly, I'm sure, over Instagram. It is not for like the light stomach. Maybe if you're thinking into how it would have tasted, but if you're not, it's something that's just absolutely insane, man.
Like, if that's what you get for winning a fight, what's the loser doing?
You know what? The loser's probably enjoying a nice hot tub or cold bath, so I'm not worried about what that guy's doing. I'm worried about what I just watched.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's pretty much all we had on tap. We're going to transition over to the interview with Mason Black now. So until then, we have a special episode coming out on Wednesday for Women in Sports. That one is pretty much wrapped up and complete. And then on Friday, we'll be back with a regular episode. So,
and if you're listening to this, please be on the lookout for Instagram pictures of the first annual Golf Orion Classic coming soon.
Tomorrow morning, it's going to be 3 degrees, so wear a coat.
Here we go.
All right, and I'm going to transition now over to Mason. So thanks, everybody. Bye. Okay, everybody, welcome back to the Orion Sportscast. We're joined today by a very special guest, Mason Black from the NHL Rank King app. Mason, do you want to tell us about who you are, your background in hockey, all that good stuff?
Sure. Played hockey pretty much my entire life. I was pretty fortunate. I got a scholarship down to the U.S., played a little Div 3, just north of Chicago at a small liberal arts school called Lake Forest College. And then from there, I kind of had the choice of going to some semi-pro or some pro overseas, and decided that I would get into a teaching career instead. So started when I was pretty young, and I've been working away at that for about the last 18 years or so. Yeah.
So how did just to get right to the app, because it's one of my favorite apps to use just for any
Josh,
research.
tell the viewer what the name of the app is.
NHL Rank King. So it's play on words there. But I came across this app. I think I just saw it on Twitter. And I just thought, I'll check this out. I love everything hockey. And I was really drawn into the how in-depth it is and the many usages for it. So how did this app come around? Like, what were you thinking? How did it all come to fruition?
It kind of actually ties into my teaching career a little bit. I was asked to take over our computer science department at the high school that I teach at, and I'd been out of the game for a little bit, so I hadn't done any computer programming. So I thought I better try to figure out how to do that, relearn all the little skills and things. And I thought, what better way to do that than to actually create something that I'm actually interested in. So it started with something actually pretty simple. So there's a little game inside of the app called Who'd You Rather. 2 players pop up, and you just have to choose which one you would rather have on your fantasy team.
That's a great. I just noticed that. That was the most interesting part when I was researching the app. I was like, why am I choosing this right now? I was kind of confused. Like, why do I have the choice?
Yeah. So every time that you pick a player, the rankings get adjusted. So,
Okay.
If you're going to take, let's say, Austin Matthews versus Connor McDavid, and let's say that you choose Austin Matthews, his ranking will increase slightly and Connor McDavid's will drop a little bit. And then every single time, thousands of times per day, as users are playing this Who'd You Rather game, those overall rankings get adjusted. So it kind of creates like the law of averages takes over. So traditionally what we typically have when we start doing rankings for things like fantasy hockey, and fantasy football is there's a lot of bias in there. I think most of us cheer for a team and tend to gravitate towards, the players that we know the best, or that we just have that gut feeling that this guy's going to end up producing later on. And hopefully what happens is that bias gets taken out inside the app, because we literally have thousands of people that are contributing to that part of the app. So that's how it started. That was just kind of, I wanted to do something that I could actually get something out of it, so that as I take a look at my fantasy leagues, I want to see, who are the best players, and, who are the guys that I'm ranking higher than the consensus, and then who are the guys that I'm ranking lower than the consensus.
Right. I like that. There's a stat in there that I had never seen before when I opened the app, and there was a little bit of background on it, but I just want you to talk about it, maybe for our listeners, explain what it is. And that's the PNHLE stat. What is that? Where did that come around from?
So for the longest time, I think all of us that are inside, dynasty leagues or keeper leagues in fantasy, oftentimes we have to make choices on prospects that are coming up. And the problem with that is most of the time we don't have enough time ourselves to watch all of these prospects play. So the PNHLE stat basically equalizes and comes up with a single number that represents the prospect point potential if they make it to the NHL. So it's not a stat that says, this player is 90% guaranteed to get there. That's not a part of the stat at all. It just says, if they do get there, what can we expect from them when they're 25, 26? So I was pretty fortunate. I did my master's a couple of years ago, and one of the courses I took was like a mathematical problem solving, and the professor let me kind of build that stat. It's something that I'd been working on for quite a while, but just inside spreadsheets. So this way I was able to like academically kind of go through the process of developing something that, had, a math professor in university take a look at my work and kind of verify how good or how bad it was, or give me recommendations on how to tweak it and to make it a little bit better. So yeah, so just the sense of the PNHLE or stat is it just projects what a prospect's point potential is down the road.
Right, and I find that stat really interesting because when it comes to the draft, maybe the players in the first 2 rounds and where they're going to end up, and then after that, it's kind of like, okay, who is this guy? Where's he going? And then you can kind of take a look at that and see, even from previous drafts, what they're expected to be. And that's one thing I found really helpful and interesting with the app. I'm glad I have a better understanding of how that came around and what it is. Go ahead.
It's kind of interesting, like the app started with that who'd you rather game and just came up with prospect ranking and NHL player rankings. And then from there, it's kind of evolved almost into a prospect app. So it just let the users guide the direction that they wanted to see the different features. So I take a lot of recommendations, and when I have time, I just do it as a hobby. So when I have time, I try to build in all of the features. So over time, it continually evolves. And PNHLE is something obviously that's devoted mainly towards prospects, and when you're trying to find out who are the best prospects coming up. And like you said, you can usually take a look at the first round of an NHL draft and pick off those players who we think are going to be better down the road. But one of those things is oftentimes prospects are, a defensive defenseman. So coming from a fantasy standpoint, you don't necessarily want to draft, let's say, a Braden Schneider who was drafted this year by the New York Rangers. Instead, you probably want to go for, let's say, like Jamie Drysdale, who should have a pretty high offensive upside to him down the road.
Right, and that's fantasy is a big thing with, especially in our age demographic, and a lot of people they just go for the big players, right? And this allows you to look in depth of the player and what they can expect, and give them a little bit more background. Obviously, the app is really in depth and provides a lot of analysis standpoints. Have any teams or organizations reached out to you about using it or been in contact to talk about it?
Not exactly. I think I'm sure all of the teams probably have something that's much more in depth and better than the PNHLE. So there are some pretty major flaws inside the stat, admittedly. One of those is that time on ice is not incorporated into that. Right. So you might see a player that has, an 80 point potential. And then suddenly they make the jump to the NHL, they're stashed on the 4th line, and then their point potential looks like 40 points. Right. So the stat itself is actually meant to be a trend. So you want several years to see, how are they trending. Most players have at least 1 year that's an anomaly. So either they spike up really high or it goes down really low. And you have to watch out for that. But you can actually use that to your advantage from a fantasy perspective. If you see one guy, I'm just trying to think, Dmitry Zavgorodny. Played for Rimouski this year. His line mate was none other than Alexis Lafreniere. So his stat jumped up way high, and there's no doubt that he's playing with the best prospect and probably in the entire world. So there's no doubt that his PNHLE kind of skyrocketed. Now he's gone over since to the KHL. He's doing quite well over there. And could eventually be a good player for Calgary. But you just have to watch out for those little things that aren't built into the app. Right. And to the stat.
So I just pulled up a player here on the app. I just pulled up Corey Perry, and there's a multi-cat fantasy value, and it has what looks like 9 or 10 categories here. So you got blocks, hits, goals, assists, game-winning goals, power play points, shots, penalty minutes, and plus minus. Do you want to talk about that multi-cat fantasy value?
So many of the features that I build are primarily for things to help myself out. So when I'm looking at a player, if I want to pick up Corey Perry, I want to make sure that if I'm in a multi-cat league, how good is he actually across the cats? And, if I'm really strong in goals and assists, maybe I'm lacking in other stats like hits and blocks and plus minus or penalty minutes or things like that. So, we can expect a guy like Corey Perry, probably just because of his age, he's probably going to decrease a little bit. But you'll notice he's in the 73rd percentile in blocks, 53rd in hits, and his penalty minutes are obviously off the board. And if you know Corey Perry, he's kind of like one of those dirtbag players that we love to have on our own team but hate to play against. So it takes a look at about 10 different stats, and it just sort of creates what's called a radar chart and gives you a spread of how strong that player is across the board for all different types of categories, which can be super helpful.
Yeah.
I think most fantasy leagues now are going to the multi-category format, and that just gives you a real quick snapshot of how good this player is in very specific categories.
Yeah, like I didn't just looking at it now, I now see the value that would have if you're doing a fantasy draft, where you're probably going to want to spread your players' value amongst all of those categories, right? You don't want to be overloading on the hits value or the power play points value. So exactly. It's really good. Yeah, that's a really interesting stat. So obviously the app's doing well. What are your favorite features of the app?
I think I'm drawn towards the player profiles. There's just so much inside of that. I've got sort of connections with a bunch of sort of outside websites right now. So most of the stats are taken from Elite Prospects, which is kind of the up and coming. It's kind of taken over Hockey DB right now, and they're just getting bigger and better all the time. I have a collaboration with Dauber Hockey and Dauber Prospects, which is sort of the the preeminent fantasy website probably on the internet. And so I'm actually building another stat right now called UTE, and it takes a look at NHL players upside, and it's built into their fantasy I forget exactly what it's called, but Frozen Tools, I believe. And so it's going to be coming out on their website fairly soon, which is kind of exciting. And it's just
cool.
Kind of builds off PNHLE, but takes a look specifically at NHL players and tries to say, this isn't what's necessarily expected of them down the road, but this is their upside. And if they're put in like a prime position, if you land next to an Austin Matthews, for instance, you can expect that your upside, you probably got a much better chance of hitting that.
Okay. So obviously you just kind of touched on that's going to be what's coming out for the app as well. But do you have anything else planned to release onto the app, or how it's going to be used? Anything like that?
Probably not for the foreseeable future. A lot of it's tweaking, and like we just finished up the NHL draft not too long ago, and free agency. So a lot of it is just okay, now I got to get all of those players from the NHL draft. Over 200 players now have to be incorporated inside the app. Free agency, all new contracts have to be incorporated as well, the new teams that they're playing for. So a lot of it is just that kind of busy work, and there's bugs all the time that you're trying to fix. And because I get most of my stats from somewhere else, whether it's like Elite Prospects or hockeyreference.com or something like that, a lot of times if they change a format on something, you have to kind of catch up and have to change your coding to try to make amends for that.
Is it just you that sources all these stats, or do you have somebody helping you?
Yeah, no, this is kind of my passion project. Yeah, so probably much to my wife's dismay, I spend way too much time. If I got some free time, it's usually okay, I'm just going to work on the app for a half hour, an hour, or something like that on the weekend. But I love it, I enjoy it, and I find it really super useful, for my own fantasy leagues. And if there's something missing, usually I'll spend some time to try to update that and make sure that it's incorporated into the app. And I think most people that also use it are kind of finding that themselves. And there's so much like little nuance inside of it. If you want to follow your favorite team's prospects, so I know it's like the big Leafs logo or flag in the back. And I don't know if Brandon is also a Leafs fan, but I'm kind of assuming so. So you can go into the team stats, and you can actually take a look at all of their prospects that are playing anywhere in the world, and it kind of ranks them based on goals, assists, points, and then PNHLE, which is kind of the fundamental piece of that. So a guy like Nick Robertson, came actually first out of every drafted prospect in the entire world. Nick Robertson had the highest PNHLE last year. Now that doesn't include guys that were just drafted, Alexis Lafreniere, Quinton Byfield. But last year, for all prospects that were already drafted, Nick Robertson was top of the charts. So and we saw him, inside the playoffs and made an impact right away.
He has a crazy shot for his stature, I believe.
Yeah, and there's some interesting like pieces, just like his background. And one of the youngest kids in the draft, and I think Dubas took a look at some of the underlying numbers, and thought, this guy is going to be like a phenom. He's going to be, probably a top 10 talent, and where they got him in that draft is pretty amazing.
Back to Nick Robertson, I remember his PNHLE was like in the hundreds, was it not? Or am I thinking it's something else?
Yeah, he ended up with an 89 last year.
So did that drop off because of his NHL performance?
I think no, because I don't incorporate playoffs inside of that.
Okay.
So I think probably early on, a lot of players, if they start the season hot, because it's such a small sample size, their PNHLE is really high, and oftentimes it kind of drops over the course of the year. You notice that now with a lot of the European leagues. There are quite a few guys that have super high PNHLE, and that's going to come down over the course of like a long sample size.
Okay. There's a guy here I'm looking at who seems to have a pretty low one, and that's Mikko Lehtinen. He's on here twice. That's why.
Yeah. So
he's got a 65. So okay, that's not as bad as I thought it was. But do you think his should be higher? Because he's terrible at KHL.
Yeah. So right now, I just actually this weekend I included all prospects that are currently playing and also their last year stats as well. So that'll change over time. So as like the OHL and WHL eventually gets started, we're not sure when that's going to happen, but when it does, I'll probably just focus on this year's stats. But a guy like Mikko Lehtinen, he, like his entire career, he looked like maybe his top end upside was going to be a third pairing defenseman at the NHL. And chances are he was never drafted. He's probably not going to make the NHL. And then last year, out of nowhere, I think he plays for Jokerit in the KHL, but it's a Finnish team. I think he led the league in defensive scoring, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And his PNHLE jumped from 19 the year before to 46 last year. And then this year, he's off to an even like more brilliant start. I think he's got a 9 games, something like that. He's got a cannon of a shot, and his PNHLE is right now 65.
Yeah.
Which puts him at a first pairing defenseman in the NHL. And I know the Leafs have some pretty interesting battles that are going to take place in training camp whenever that happens, probably in December, hopefully December, but if not, maybe a little bit into January. And he's got a legit shot to not just land a spot with the Leafs, but also take for second power play time, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So you brought up the Leafs, so let's transition to that because they just re-signed Travis Dermott. What did you think of that signing? It was a 1-year deal, just under $900,000. Did you see that as fitting? Because I saw some people projecting him as a $4 million player.
Yeah, I mean, I think for that price tag, and considering the Leafs, their cap issues, I think it's a brilliant sign. I would have liked to see more term, but with more term is obviously going to increase that salary. I mean, he's got such a unique skill set. He can play left or right side. He's a fantastic skater. He's got a high hockey IQ. When Riley and Muzzin were both out, I think in late January, early February, he was able to play that top pairing and actually did quite well against some high quality competition. I think like the Leafs D right now, probably the top 4 are set in stone, although maybe not. So Riley and Brody, I think, are going to be a really good fit. I really like the Brody signing. Muzzin, and I think Justin Hall is going to be paired with Muzzin. I think Sheldon Keefe really likes him. I don't know if I necessarily would put him there, but I think.
Yeah, I don't know about that one either.
And then that means you've got, your third pairing. You've got guys like Dermott, Lehtinen, who we were just talking about, Bogosian. I think Sandin is NHL ready right now, and even a sleeper as Timothy Liljegren could fit in there. So I think Dermott on a third pairing with a second pairing upside is a fantastic fit, especially for that price value. Right now, I've seen projected that he's going to actually be be paired up with Lettinen. But again, I think Bogosian probably fits in there as a sixth or seventh D as well, because he's a natural right-handed shot, which are pretty hard to come by. So I think there's just almost unlimited combinations of defensive pairings that you could put out there. And it wouldn't surprise me if Dermott ended up finding some time on power play too. And then if there's injuries down the road, you could even slide up. I think this is a make or break year for him. And some interesting things about it is just his advanced stats, which are also included inside of the app. So his IPP was 22. And what IPP is every time a player scores on the ice and you're on the ice as well, it creates a percentage. So forwards typically average about 66% of the time that if a goal is scored, they're going to be either first assist, second assist, or scored the goal. Defense, it's usually about 44%. So the fact that his IPP is at 22 suggests that he has a much higher offensive upside than what he showed last year. And part of that could be just, he started the year, came off, I think, shoulder surgery, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And and had kind of a slow start, but then started to get better as the year went on. His PDO, which is kind of like puck luck, is 104. Which is actually quite high. So anything over 100.
Usually want that to be at 100, right?
Yeah, and there's other things that get taken into consideration or don't get taken into consideration with PDO, and that's the players that he's playing with. If you're playing all the time with Tavares, Marner, Austin Matthews, you expect the puck luck. Those players end up coming out with the puck more times than not, and oftentimes that contributes to little things like PDO.
Oh, that was that first stat I didn't realize. That was really, I knew about his PDO and how it was a little high, but that first stat I didn't know about that. That was really interesting.
Yeah, and I would say like IPP is one of those hidden stats specifically for fantasy that is one to focus on. If you see a forward with a super low IPP, chances are it's one of those stats that always regresses back to the mean. So if 1 year you have a really low, you can expect the next year that it's going to come back up. So I think Dermott, is kind of a sleeper in that area.
Right. So it's kind of the way I see the contract, kind of wrap that up. It's a show me contract. You got 1 year, 874,000, and then a couple extra bucks with that, 125. So it's gonna be a show me year for him. Another guy that got a deal was Ilya Mikheyev. He avoided arbitration. They settled before that, and he apparently took a pay cut because he didn't want to see anybody get traded. I don't know how much I believe that. I thought it was a smart PR move, but he got a 2-year deal at 1.6 million. What did you think of that one?
I think he has sneaky upside. I think like a guy that could eventually be a top 6 player, because I think there's a hole next to Marner and Tavares, and the Leafs are going to try to figure out who do you put there. And he's a guy that I think legitimately has sort of a great chance of landing that spot. And if he does, getting a guy at 1.65 million for a top 6 is pretty unbelievable.
Yeah.
He came off the end of the season with wrist surgery. So I don't think you need to worry about that too much, because I think he was able to play in the playoffs.
Yeah.
His time in the KHL suggested that he kind of had a third line upside. But we saw last year that he was able to contribute as a complementary winger. He's never going to be like a possession driver or a line driver, but you don't have to. If Tavares is on your line, if Marner's on your line, you just have to make sure you contribute, much in the same sense that Zach Hyman is able to do that as well. So his underlying numbers are actually really good. Like across the board, if you take a look at his Corsi and his Fenwick and all these advanced stats, he finishes pretty much in the top 25% in almost every single category. And his primary point percentage, which is it's like a rate that says, if he's getting equivalent ice time to some of the best players in the league, he actually finished 74% in the league, which is fantastic. It means that he's probably got a lot of extra point potential that he hasn't tapped into yet, especially for the fact that he didn't get any power play time pretty much the entire season.
So he, I thought it was a good contract. I mean, They avoided arbitration, which is always nice because we've heard horror stories coming out of those arbitration meetings. They pretty much sit you down and tell you why you're not good at your job. I don't think anybody would want to go through that. Another contract I found interesting, and maybe I didn't like it, maybe you can convince me otherwise, was the Max Domi contract in Columbus. What were your thoughts on that? Because I thought it was a little not so good.
Yeah, so here's what I would say. Like, if I was going to break this down specifically from a fantasy perspective, but oftentimes there's a lot of similarities between real life value and fantasy value. So he's coming off his second worst year career wise, and that includes like his time in the OHL with the London Knights.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like that buy low. So, and you're always looking for that, right? But it also means that his salary probably should have been a little bit less than maybe what he signed for at 5.3.
He got 5.3 over 2 years, yeah, which will walk him right to UFA.
Right, exactly. So that's a little bit scary. He never seemed to fit in with Claude Julien's system. Like, I think he's naturally a center, and most of the time he was spending on the wing this past year. His frequent line mates were Arturi Lehkonen and Nick Suzuki, and Suzuki's a great player, but at the same time he's a rookie. So if you put him, next to, let's say, I don't know, Thomas Tatar's been fantastic, Brandon Gallagher, I'm guessing his stats probably would have looked a lot nicer. The fact that he only got 17 minutes a night, I think he's going to get a lot more time in Columbus. And part of that is just the contract. If you're willing to pay a guy over $5 million, he's going to play. He's going to play a lot. He's going to play on the power play. His underlying advanced stats numbers are kind of really good, but almost all of Montreal is. Montreal's like a shoot first team, and they end up leading most of the categories. The Phil Deneaus and the Thomas Tatar, those guys are some of the best in the league, which is a little bit misleading because of the style of play that they just put everything they can on net, and they're hoping for rebounds, for tip shots or whatever. His next year, it'll be interesting to see who he lines up with. I'm guessing Gustav Nyquist and Cam Atkinson right now, which could actually provide some pretty decent value. So overall, if we just go back to some of those advanced stats to the PDO that we talked about earlier. So his PDO was 98.6, which says he actually had pretty bad puck luck last year, which might show why he had such a drop off in terms of overall points. His IPP was 61. So again, average is about 66. So it's quite low, which suggests that he's probably going to have a little bit of a breakout. And just the fact that he's going to get prime deployment from a fantasy perspective, he's a guy that I could potentially go after.
Nice. And then I think the coaching fit is good for him as well with John Tortorella there. I mean, and Brandon, you had this, you sent me it. He didn't get along well with Claude Julien there. And they even had that story coming out that they were unhappy with him going into the play-in round because he was late to the bubble. What was that all about?
So there was a Toronto Sun article here, sorry, that I got sent. I know someone, actually, my mom walks a dog with someone who's a producer for TSN, and he sent me this Toronto Sun article. I'll just read it where it was highlighted. It said the beginning of the end for Max Domi with the Montreal Canadiens started when he took time to thoughtfully determine whether he would participate in return to play because of his diabetes. Domi made a wise choice in taking his time. The Habs, I'm told, were not so impressed.
Yeah, that doesn't sound good.
I don't even know I don't know where to start.
The guy's diabetic, and you're going into a bubble. You want to make the right decision, and they're rushing him for it. So that probably started to taint the relationship a little bit too. So hopefully a new scenery will be good for him, and maybe I'll come around on the contract. I just thought it was a high price for him coming off the year he had, but could be a good value player. Maybe that'll wake him up a little bit. Who's your team? What team do you support?
I'm a huge diehard Blackhawks fan. So
okay.
We've had a pretty successful run the last decade, but I think just with the reports that are coming out this past week, actually,
I heard that too.
Yeah, we're now officially in rebuild mode, and I think we've been in that, but now the Blackhawks are making a choice to be more transparent about it, to the dislike of guys like Patrick Kane and Jonathan Taves. If you're spending $10.5 million on those two guys each, it's pretty tough to say, we're going to start rebuilding for the next couple of years.
So do you think they'll trade any of those guys? Because they've still got some term left.
Yeah, they definitely have term left, so the choice is going to be up to them. I think they have both full no move clauses, so I think they realize. My understanding was that Bowman actually sat down with the core group that's left there, so Taves, Kane, Keith, and Seabrook, and basically said, this is the rebuild. It doesn't say we're going to blow things up like the Rangers did. We still got these core pieces. They're all able to contribute moving forward. But we have to have a focus on developing prospects and giving those guys an opportunity. So instead of going out and trying to fill your roster with these vets that are worth $1 million, it doesn't make sense because we're not going to do too much in the playoffs, even if we make the playoffs. So let's give these guys an opportunity. The Kirby Docs, the Adam Boquist, give them prime deployment, see what they can do. And then, if we end up with a top 10 draft pick on top of that, that's how you actually build your development system.
Is Alex Nylander there now?
He is. So there's a guy. I'm not very high on Alex Nylander. I don't know. He's got all the tools. Surprisingly, he does well, like back checking, and he's not great in the defensive zone, but he busts his ass to get back there. But he just can't finish. He just, even if he's playing with Kane, there's just something missing out of his game. But I think he's going to get another opportunity. It's hard to imagine that he just finished his rookie year. It seems like he's been a prospect forever. But, I don't know. I think from my understanding, they're planning on lining him up with either Taves or Kane this year on the left side. So, you're probably I could probably play on the left side and pick up the way.
I think if their rebuild goes as well as the Rangers did, and I think they're trying to take the same approach with releasing that letter and everything, I think the Rangers got in front of it a little bit quicker. But the Rangers they're competitors now. They're, especially with all the signing, they got that first round pick. They might have lucked into that because it was a not so typical lottery draw, but if they can follow that rebuild structure, I think they'll be fine within 2 to 3 years. But if there's bad blood and no communication between the front office and the players, I think that's where you start to get into trouble, right? And
absolutely.
The fan base is going to take the player sides because they brought them 3 cups. So hopefully they get that figured out. Brandon, do you have anything else you want to bring up?
Honestly, no. I'm glad you mentioned that article, but this was up to you. This was a lot of your findings and research, and my eyes are super. I honestly I didn't expect who to see behind the app, right? Like I had no clue until I saw your face on the Zoom call. I know you guys might have been talking a little bit, but it's really interesting to see your face and to hear it, because it's hard to understand it by going through all the sections on it. But if you hear it through a demonstrational talk or whatever, then now I was sitting there the whole time, almost just doing the fantasy with the forwards and the goalies, just contributing to the algorithm.
Right. Awesome.
And so I can do that all day.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point. Sometimes, before bed, I actually get in, and 45 minutes has passed. I'm like, holy crap! I gotta get up early in the morning. And
I learned so much, and I've been playing hockey since I was 3, and at a very competitive level too. So, but since coronavirus, it's kind of my age and the level of hockey now. It's kind of like I either go into like senior men's professional or whatever, or amateur, or play beer league. So it's not like junior hockey for me anymore. But it's so the fantasy side and talking sports is interesting. So this, and you creating an app it's really, really technical too, which you've been in studying for as well, which I've heard. So that's the credibility for the app for me is great.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it was great having you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Anything else to add, Mason? Want to plug anything?
No, pretty much just the app. Give it a test drive if you haven't downloaded it. It's on Android and Apple, which kind of has its own. You actually have to create the app twice, completely from scratch. Which I started with just iOS and iPhones to begin with, and then decided, I'm losing out on half a market here. So spent really probably the last year and a half working on the Android app. And it's all about just adding features all the time. There's going to be bugs. So, things might crash every once in a while, but it's just a matter of, I don't have enough time. I don't have a team of developers behind me working on it. But it's a lot of fun. And it's something that I use all the time for my fantasy purposes. One of the big ones actually that I've been working on is the DFS. So I don't know if either of you guys are into daily fantasy. Whether, I mean, you can't really play hockey right now, but football and stuff like that.
I used to be in the daily fantasy, and I got shafted in the Leafs Carolina game when David Arias came in, and I haven't played since. So
Right. Yeah, I don't blame you.
He still hasn't recovered, I guess.
yeah,
Yeah. So I give myself about $5 a day to play on. So I'm not a huge gambler or whatever, but like my goal is just if I can beat the algorithm. So it's all built inside the app too. So I came up with an algorithm to try to find out who are the best value players to play that day. And then from that, everyone's going to come up with a different lineup. So it doesn't say, you automatically have to pick Connor McDavid today, but you're going to have a choice probably between, 10 guys, and then you start to build and stack your lineups through that. And, it's something that I constantly tweak, and I think it gets a little bit better. And, I've done quite well. I usually, put in, let's say $1,000 a year. And I end up with, 2,000 at the end of the year. So usually, typically, you get on stretches that you run, and you get on cold stretches as well. But pretty much, I've done pretty well on that.
That's awesome.
Well, this has been great. Thanks for coming on. We'll put a link down below to the app download in both stores. Do you want us to link to your Twitter as well? Get some more followers on there.
Sure. Yeah, that's always fun.
Thanks for coming on, and I'm sure we'll talk again. This has been great.
All right, guys, appreciate it.
No problem. Talk to you later.
All right, take care.